Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Literacy View. We have a very special episode tonight. I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Tre Hadrick. He and I met during the pandemic on social media. He is a guidance counselor. He is an advocate. He is a former college football star. And I think he is just one of the best people I know. So I'm so happy to have him with us tonight. Judy is going to introduce Isabel Simmons. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Judy.
All right. So I met Isabel Simmons. I had the privilege of meeting one of the greatest people that I know about 6 years ago on the Universal Literacy team. And what ended up happening is we became best friends. The second that I met Isabel, it was like she was a ray of light. I was like, I want to be friends with that lady. She is special. And boy, is she special. She has 22 years of devoted service so far in the New York City public school system. She taught all grades, K to 5, except 4th grade, but I'm sure she's coaching in 4th grade, so that's good. She did 3 seasons of Let's Learn New York City, where during the pandemic and even after, Channel 13 was hosting phonics lessons and phonemic awareness videos, and Izzy was a star with her son, Alex, who is the apple of my eye as well, who I know is little koala bear. And she is now a school-based coach for the last, I think it's 6 years now and additional credentials on her own in the summertime. She got trained to be an Acadians mentor in dyslexic screeners. And she's also a Leader in Me trained facilitator. She's the best person that I ever knew. I love you, Izzy.
All right. So we have 2 very special people on. And as you can see, Judy and I adore our guests. So let's get on with the show. So we're going to be discussing an article tonight entitled NAACP Targets a New Civil Rights Issue, Reading. Advocates say using the science of reading to improve reading instruction is a step towards social justice for Black children. So, and the article is by Sarah Carr, and it is an outstanding article. It came out on December 27th, 2022. The article looks at how phonics instruction was not really the focus for a very long time, and many kids have suffered along the way. In particular, Black children, Black and Latino children who were not given the right instruction. And I'd like to address this today because obviously we talk about literacy issues, but we are going to talk mainly about the factor tonight of race and equity. That's really the focus of tonight. And I'd like to turn it over to our guests. You both read the article, and I'd like to just know your impressions. Let's just start off with something that you felt, if you could pull something out of the article that resonated with you in some way, what would it be? Either one of you, it doesn't matter. Do you want to start? It looks like Izzy, you're ready to go.
Oh, I'm raring to go. I'm chomping at the bit.
Okay, go ahead.
There was a person mentioned in the article, Hampton, Sujitha Hampton, I believe her name was. And what she said really struck me. She said, I was not going to have a Black child going to school without knowing how to read, right? I could not take the risk that the school would not see her as smart enough or not smart at all. And I could very easily have said that was my feeling with my son. When my son first started school, I said, okay, I'm putting him in school well before I need to, so that he'll be ready and he'll be prepared in a way that he might not get prepared or be prepared in the public school system. So I really resonated with that thought. And I'm a public school teacher, but it's not that I doubt the teacher's intentions. Everyone's intentions are great, but education, the way I believe the inequity in the educational system is really just a symptom of our society. And until we really acknowledge that and grapple with that, nothing's going to change.
Mhm.
That's how
Trey,
I feel.
thank
So,
you.
sorry, Trey.
No, yeah, thank you, Izzy.
Yes,
Trey, your thoughts?
So I've been watching Miss Hampton for the last 2 years on social media, and everything in there is true. From my just remembrance, I remember when they put the letter out that they sent to the school district, outlining a lot of things that they were demanding from the NAACP. Myself, my parents are both on the education committee of our local NAACP, so I understand the importance of fighting for the civil rights in regards to literacy. My parents are both former educators, retired educators, so it's so important. I think the article speaks volumes, as Izzy said, just to the stance that many people have been fighting for years in this country. And the reality is we're still in that same fight and today, and I think that all NAACPs, including Miss Hampton, the NAACP in Oakland, California with Kareem Weaver, and even my local NAACP, hopefully that they will join board and continue to fight as these other ones are, because I think it starts for the Black community in particular, or communities of color. That is a forefront organization that could really be monumental in the change that's needed in the science of reading and education in all areas.
Judy, your thoughts?
So first of all, I want to say that I'm really proud that we're doing this episode. Initially, I was like, oh my God, this is a tough topic. What if I don't say the right thing? What if I don't do the right thing? And, Izzy and I have been friends for a very long time. And I think one of the best parts of my relationship with Izzy is I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid that she's going to think I'm a bad person. I learn from her because honestly, I'm a first generation American Russian Jewish woman. My parents have their story, but Izzy has her story and Izzy has her experiences. And I can't feel exactly what somebody else is feeling. Everybody's experience is different. And I think it's very important to not be afraid to have those serious discussions and not fear judgment. And I felt very safe today doing that. And I want to say, I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, feel that reading is the key for a civil liberty. It's not optional. It's not just about understanding what a teacher's reading you out loud. It's also being able to lift the words off of the page and be able to, think for yourself. And it's not fair that so many kids are continuing to slip through the crack. I know everybody's trying, but every minute counts, because every minute that we're not helping a kid is a minute that a child's not going to grow up literate, and that's not okay.
So I want to address the quote that Izzy pulled out, because I also highlighted that quote, Izzy. And it stood out to me because it made me think that people have to teach their kids before they go to school. Isn't that what school is for? To
Right.
teach kids to read? Shouldn't that be the primary goal of early childhood education? That it's just expected that kids should learn how to read. But it was interesting to me that there was so much emotion in that quote that she felt that if she was going to send her child to school, she wanted to make sure that this child would not slip and had the best chance of succeeding, and she took it into her own hands. So is that something, I guess I'm going to throw it out to all of you, is that something that parents should be doing? Is that what we expect parents to do, to kind of shield their kids from the public school system, that they should be teaching their kids before they enter school? Just a thought.
I mean, go ahead, Izzy, you gonna say something?
No, Trey, you first.
No, I just personally, I think that the protection that being able to read does for a Black child, especially because if you can't read, usually you have behavioral issues.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So right away, if you're not having that skill, your parent is trying to arm you with a skill that will allow you to at least not be judged off your color and your behavior. I think that's so powerful. Even though I do believe that those early years should be just love and care for a child, that you shouldn't have to teach reading. You should teach maybe listening skills from listening to stories. I don't think it's a problem teaching, the sounds, because we're all going to learn that, but having to get into deep details of reading, I don't think you should have to. But in the state we are, and unfortunately, not just to be judged so you don't get in trouble, but the way the outcomes are right now, and I know everything's not based off of one test score, but we can't act like it's not valid, because if it was on the positive side, everybody would be happy, right? So it's on the negative side, and people are like, let's not judge it by one test score, and I'm not about that either, but I'm just being realistic that you just got to be honest, like if it was on a positive 80% or higher proficient in advance, the world would be cheering for joy and using those statistics. So we have to use it consistently, regardless of the number.
Yeah.
I think if you can prepare your children for school, you should. And it doesn't matter what color your child is. You should be preparing them. You should be going over sounds. You should be listening to stories. All of these things that we do, that we take for granted that are going to happen in school. I thought it was especially important for my son because he was always the tallest kid. It's always the goofiest kid. But I didn't want people look at him and all it doesn't. The first thought isn't, wow, he's got to be a great reader. No, it's like, oh, maybe he's going to play basketball, or maybe that, things that aren't academically inclined. And I wanted him to be prepared. And I didn't want preconceived notions, implicit bias to affect where he went in life. And so the earlier you start, if I were me, or if I were talking to any parent, the sooner you get them started in the getting love of learning, because what happens, success breeds success.
Facts.
I always use that expression.
Facts.
It's true, right?
It is.
So if they're always doing well, their expectation of themselves is that they're always going to do well. When they come across something that's giving them a little bit of a problem, they have this history of always doing well. So they're going to want to work harder.
Yeah.
Right?
I'd like to just jump in here, because both of you seem to say that, especially a Black boy, because you're talking about your son, you're talking about yourself and you having a son, that there could be these feelings that as soon as somebody sees a Black boy, they're thinking, all right, there could be a behavior problem. And, or perhaps, if he's not doing well, that the teacher might be always focused on this kid rather than someone else. And it's very interesting. And I think it's important to bring this out, that there was a study done where I think preschool Black boys, I can't even imagine it, but preschool Black boys were being expelled from school, and they were being targeted for behavioral issues. And it really didn't have anything to do with academics at this point, but just the idea that, these were normal behaviors of kids getting a little rambunctious, but somehow the teacher kept calling the mother in and making it so miserable that the mother ended up pulling the kid out and putting the kid into a different school, because it just became impossible. So it's not the first time I've heard these things. So this happens, I guess, more often than we'd like to believe, and how that continues through school, where perhaps we keep thinking that these kids are troublemakers when maybe they just have some academic issues, or even more so that they're just not being taught the right way, and that's causing the academic issues. Judy, what do you think?
First of all, I agree 100%. Nobody's going to behave really well when they're doing something that's really hard and they can't do it. It must be so hard for so many of our kids to be in a class where the expectations are to be on grade level, and some of those kids still don't know their letters or sounds. And that basically is telling me that there's something wrong. And what I thought was really powerful in the article was it mentioned specific data. Data doesn't lie. Some of the gaps, I think they mentioned Fairfax, had a 20% gap in reading scores between white and Black students. That's a problem. So people could say, oh, race doesn't matter. It matters. The data is telling us that something is not working. We see it. I mean, people are trying to do better, but this has been happening for a while now. And I think everybody's heart is in the right place. And we have to start talking about solutions because this crap cannot go on anymore. It's enough. We're failing. You know what? I think I'm pretty smart, right? I did okay in my life, right? I've been working in the school system. I had other things going on, but life is damn hard, even for me. It's really, really hard. Every day is a struggle to make ends meet. I could only imagine what a kid comes out of high school, cannot read. What does their future look like? It might not be very good.
All right, so I'm going to jump in and say, and I'm sure people listening, let's say we have a white family listening to this discussion, and I'm sure there are going to be white families listening, and they're saying to themselves, my kid can't read either. My kid struggles. What is it like? Why do you think that maybe this is a Black and Latino issue when I have a child who's struggling? Why are we making this such an important issue for Black families? So I'd like to, Tre, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think it goes back to what Judy said about data, right? If it doesn't lie and based on historical numbers, we've been behind. So no matter what, to me, that's the number one reason why the emphasis needs to be put there. You know, if you're saying X amount of students who don't get on grade level by third grade end up falling further behind, and they become part of the school to prison pipeline, and look at the jail data, and you look at the race in jail and prison and everything as such, you know, it goes hand in hand. So I think, to me, that's the key. Like, looking at the data, you know, and history, you know, and data don't lie, but so much, right? It's pretty darn accurate. And I think that's what we have to be honest with. Like I said before, we don't want to talk about the numbers when they're bad, but when they're good, we're all praising them, right? And we have to have those, you know, hard, honest discussions, you know, at this point. You know, we can't say, you know, Black our Facebook pages out on June 2nd, 2020 for George Floyd, and then forget about, you know, all this type of stuff, or even say Black Lives Matter and all these things, right? And not have it in all aspects of life, right? And education is mandatory in this country. You must send your child to school to learn somewhere during those formative years. And if you're making us send our children and you're not giving them a product, that's a challenge. And I think that's where that all stems from. Why, as Black people, we've been behind, you know, for numerous reasons.
For numerous reasons. And until I look at the education as a microcosm for the world we live in, right? It doesn't, what this inequality that we're seeing in education is everywhere. And again, it comes down to the idea that we have to address it. So yes, there are struggling readers of all races in this country. Yes, the educational system in every state needs an overhaul, right? We know it, and it's not, and in the article, one of the things that popped out at me was they said phonics instruction is not enough.
Yes.
Right? This is what we're talking about, is the beginning of a long road, but it is just the beginning of the road. And
Right.
that's what I would tell everyone. This is the idea of of phonics and the science of reading, which I always think of as like, we say it so much, it becomes like this magical book somewhere that has all the answers. It's just a series of studies that they've compiled. And the thing about it is, it sometimes with studies, this is the thing that really irritates me, where studies contradict each other. And it becomes a political issue. And it becomes, you know, it is a race issue, right? But because we haven't dealt with race as an issue in our country, this social contracts that we have built together. We're in a social contract to agree that if I'm Black, that means something. If you're white, that means something. But in reality, we are people.
Yeah.
That's right.
First and foremost. And until we can say this, right? So if someone were to say to me, well, my son struggles, it's just as simple as like saying, well, I don't make that much money. How am I privileged? How do I have it easier than you? Well, until you have my son is 13, he's almost 6'2",
Mm.
right? He's going to go through the world in a way that is different because he's just beginning to grow. He's probably going to go 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", tall, big, imposing, gentle giant.
Mm-hmm.
But people look at tall Black men and they're immediately threatened.
Just like Tre. I'm telling you, when I stood next to Tre, I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel so small. And yet he's just like the sweetest person in the world. But I'm sure you see this big imposing man, and right away, you're thinking like, oh, like he's a big tough guy, and he is a tough guy, but like, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Just, that somebody is looking to cause trouble. It's that look that may be up,
So, Faith, there's two
Yes.
things that come out to me, right? When we were talking about the pre-K children that were their behavior was hyper focused on, right? Implicit bias is strong, and it's not the thing about it is it's not just strong amongst everyone. So like if you do studies on little kids and you'd say what's the better color, Black or white, it doesn't matter whether the child is Black or the child is white, they're all going to say white, because it's like this implicit like bias that
it's been ingrained in this society. It's been ingrained, and and it's tough because you can't blame everybody of the current day for everything that's going on.
Right.
You can say you are benefiting from a lot of things, right? But people who partaked and benefited from that years ago are trying to run from the reality, of what things are. And the reality is that's how this country was founded, and it was ingrained for years amongst years. I mean, we can't see it up today except for in school, right? Settings of inequities or, not excellence in every setting. But there was time where it was a Black bathroom and a white bathroom. That's just the reality. Like, you don't see that, but that is the reality of this country, and just imagine, like, I couldn't go to the same bathroom as you, Faith. I couldn't go to the same school as you. Like, that was a reality, and it wasn't long ago. I mean, we tend to push history away fast when we don't want to talk about it. Right. But just to think about Dr. King could have been 95 if he was still living. Like, that's not like he was 150 or something. Like, I think people don't realize, how these things are very close in time.
Yeah.
And some people honestly live through it and remember all of that happening. So
100%.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Judy, jump in.
So Izzy and we had some conversations these last couple of days, and every time we started talking, we were like, wait, let's talk about that later. And I just wanted to mention one of the conversations we had. So I asked Izzy, honestly, I said, Izzy, I'm on social media, on Twitter, and I see a lot of like white dyslexia moms. They're really angry. I don't really see that many people of color like enraged as much as like some of these white moms. They're really, really angry. And then, the article actually said something that I thought was really interesting. It kind of gave me an answer. Where is my answer? Oh yeah, because the article mentioned that there's like, for a lot of Black people, and I can't speak for Black people, I'm not Black, I'm not. But it mentioned—
No, really?
You never know.
It's true.
You didn't check
Very
my
true.
ancestry.
Very
You
true.
didn't check ancestry.com. You don't know. But
Right,
anyway,
go ahead.
So the point was that the article said something about that saying something is wrong with your kid in the Black community is really hard because there's so many things that already some people might not feel is not good enough or not smart enough. And I was like, holy cow, maybe that's why. But I can't, just assume that from an article. So I'd love to hear either from Tre or Izzy about why am I not seeing as many? Like I see Kareem, I see Tre on social media, but why isn't there like this public outrage?
Ooh, can I jump in? Can I jump
Yeah,
in?
yeah, I'm going
Okay,
after you.
You going?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I was like, when Judy, when you mentioned that the other day, I said, "Oh, I'm thinking about something." You're like, "Save it for the." Okay. So, there is a privilege in being able to complain,
Really?
right? That idea that you have the right to complain, you have the right to get an education that serves you, right? That right, a lot of people of color, and I'm not speaking for everybody, okay? I don't do that. I'm speaking for people I know. We don't complain that much because we sort of expect certain things to happen. We expect certain misconceptions, implicit bias to occur. So we're always kind of like working around the problem and not like boom, 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 beating the drum. I mean, even in this article, I felt that there was a validation piece, right? So in the article, it says that a white woman spoke up, right? She worried about the disproportionate amount impact felt by Black and Hispanic children, noting that universal access to stronger reading instruction might be the most effective way to narrow the gap, right? And then right after that's a quote. She was a white woman with white children, but framed it in racial equity terms, Hampton said. We felt like we could get behind it and know we were taking care of our kids. And it almost said, wow, this woman saw our struggle. So now it exists.
Mhm.
You see it now, it exists. It always existed,
Yeah.
but we always are making excuses. We don't want to be like, okay, rock the boat too much, right? But here we can say, look,
Yeah.
we're not the only people seeing it. Other people are seeing it. Other people that are not Black are
Yeah.
seeing that there's a problem. So now we can, and I felt that really bothered me when I saw that
Yeah.
quote, to be honest with you. Sorry.
See, that's hard for me to understand because my whole life is complaining. I complain a hell of a lot.
Well, talking about complaining, I live in a place called Plainview and people call it Complain View.
No way.
So that's what people do here. They complain. So it's so amazing to me. Like if those same statistics existed where I live, you would have people banging down the door. It's just, it would never go here. So Tre, what do you think?
So coming from like the counselor side of me, in regards to why Black people don't fight for literacy, as the dyslexia white mothers, as you said, Judy.
And I hope that didn't offend you. I'm just like,
No. Listen to me. So I think, going back to the behavioral stuff, a lot of times our parents are like, you go to school and act good and don't get in trouble, right? They never said go to school and make sure you can read. So that's not a fight. If you even think about it, when we talk about a lot of other issues in school, it's like suspension rates and expulsion. When they're talking about the young kids who are in preschool getting expelled, we weren't talking about how many of those kids couldn't read and weren't taught how to read, right? So it's almost like Izzy said, in regards to having being thankful to being in this environment, you act right, and that came from, honestly, from integration, right? And desegregation, when everything came together. Now you're in these schools that are nice and you act right. Not even about make sure you go learn something. It's more about behaviors, because there's so much of a fear that if your behavior is out of line, you're going to get disciplined or you're going to get hurt or someone in your family, all those type of things because of the historical, just going back to history, that's still ingrained. Like my father in our little town here remembers going to elementary school and it was predominantly almost all Black, right? And the other side of town was all white. And we're a small little community. And Faith can tell you that we are small. And my dad remembers that. So just think about it, it's not that far removed. So I think a lot of times our families are more concerned about our behavior, And I always tell people, like, I'd rather have a kid who's acting up a little bit behaviorally, but can read and write,
Right.
than a kid who's sitting in the classroom being good, but doesn't understand anything on the page. Because no matter what, this English American language, right, has been formed and created, and it's part of our society, and you have to learn it to be successful. And that's what we have to start teaching, that these behavioral problems sometimes are because you cannot read and write, as life goes on.
So I'm going to pick up on that. In the article, Hampton said that she taught many youth labeled emotionally disturbed, almost all of whom she said were Black and struggled with reading. So this idea of being labeled emotionally disturbed, I think, you know, when a white kid can't read, we're looking to see why that kid can't read. And if the kid is acting up, at least here, everything is ADHD. I don't know about everything is, you know, oh, it's the kid has an attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity, but we don't say emotionally disturbed. And I think that label is really disturbing to me.
I agree.
That all these kids are being labeled emotionally disturbed, and they're pretty much all Black.
I think that would be a good study.
Yeah.
If you want to see what percentage of children are labeled emotionally disturbed.
Oh, I get the chills. That makes me sick.
Like if you did a study on that, you know, based upon any area or, you know, in the country, and just say what percentage of children are considered emotionally disturbed in that school district, right? What is their race, you know, and how many? And it would be interesting, because if you start doing stuff and you're breaking it down, you're right. Some other kids might be, you know, the learning disabled or something as such, you know, like they want to be considered emotionally disturbed, you know. So that's very interesting that you said that. And I hate to say it, but it just goes back to some of the stereotypes, because if you hear honors classes, you're thinking predominantly white, depending on where you live. You know, you hear emotionally disturbed, you're going to think sometimes a Black child in the area, you know. ADHD and all that, I think that could be intertwined between white and Black, you know, as time has grown. But the other two, it's challenging, you know. I mean,
yeah. And I do want to say that there, you know, ADHD is a real issue. I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying that the labels are different. When the school jumps in and said, oh, you know, maybe like the child should be tested, we're always thinking that there's something that could be done for that child. But here, you know what, we're going to put this child into self-contained special ed emotionally disturbed classes. And there's, again, it goes back to a bias. I wanted to also point out something from the article that was, it really struck me. And it said that a different person, Carrie Liestma, an education specialist, said that she recalls one 15-year-old who had been held back and was reading at a second grade level in 8th grade. Within a couple of months, he was arrested and he's still in jail now. So that's the reality of looking at the prison population. We're seeing the prisons filled with kids who couldn't read and write. Not all of them, of course, but a good many of them had these problems. Any thoughts about that in terms of recognizing kids early on and almost kind of identifying them as either, you know, non-readers, that those kids won't read, or that we could say they'll probably end up in the prison system?
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, very often, unfortunately, in education, we think, okay, the kid is doing something wrong, or there's something wrong with the kid. And we don't think enough about, okay, what are we doing in those classrooms? What is the curriculum? What are we doing besides just 30 minutes of phonics? What the hell is going on the rest of the day? And you know what? I think that schools need to have mandates in place. It can't just be, oh, I'll do TC and I'll do core knowledge and I'll do this. We need evidence-based programs in every single classroom, not just for a half hour, but for the entire literacy block. And we have to also start being a little skeptical. Like some programs are going to be on those lists. Some haven't been in the field for 30 years. We have to watch the data, we have to monitor it, and we have to become accountable. Every single one of us working with kids. And it has to start at the top. I personally think maybe it has to be at a federal level. I really do. Something is really wrong. And I'll talk about, years and years ago, I knew a student. I'm not going to say the student's name.
Please don't.
And I won't. I'll call her Judy. Anyway, this child will stay in my memory forever. I know a student that was retained in first grade 3 times years ago. That's not a child failure. That's a systematic failure. And I think that, a real eye-opener for me, it's not just because Faith is my co-host, but it was her book that I always have on my desk. Is it failing students or failing schools? And I think we have to accept the reality. A lot of the things that we've been doing for a very long time haven't served our students the best way possible. I admit, I only really learned how to teach kids how to decode well about 6 or 7 years ago. That means I failed many kids. Does that mean I'm going to hate myself for the rest of my life? No. Does that mean I know that I have to do better because we haven't done the best that we could? Of course, because reading is not just about knowing the first letter of a word. Reading is not guessing. Reading is not as tricky as we've all thought it is. The science is showing us that all kids can learn to read. And we can, some people are going to say, oh, but the different approaches worked for my kid. That's fine. It worked for some kids, but it didn't work for everybody. And research is saying that we have to shift because we need better outcomes for our kids. We do. We really do. And until we accept that reality and stop having these ridiculous reading wars online, no, I'm right, no, you're right, no, I'm right, no, you're right. I don't give a crap. The research is saying what we need to do, and we got to do it, not a week from now. We need to start doing it tomorrow. Teachers, everybody, principals, learn the decoding of words. There's 6 or 7 syllable types. Learn the way words work. That is rigor. Many people think that that's not rigor, but that is rigor. I'm
Comments,
sorry.
thoughts, anybody?
Makes me mad.
I'm when we think about really teaching teachers, right? So I'm in the business of teaching teachers. And so one of the things that we're working on, like I'm working with upper grade teachers now in grades 3, 4, and 5, to be specific, upper elementary. They don't know how to teach kids how to read, but they're getting a whole bunch of kids in, right, that don't know how to read. So they need to know what to do with those kids. And I think us having conversations like this, we're talking about the science of reading, we're naming things, we're saying phoneme, we're saying grapheme, we're telling them that it's not just letters and sounds. Like there are many letters that might make up one sound, and you have to be on the lookout for that. What are the rules? They're like, the teachers like today were like, okay, Isabel, give me the rules, give me all the rules. I'm like, I don't have all of the rules, but I'll give you whatever I can give you,
Going on, Izzy.
Go ahead,
know
Trey,
a
what
lot.
were you gonna say?
Go ahead, Trey.
Oh man, it just it's a lot. So I'm a former student athlete, as Faith said, and I did coach football for quite some time, and I coached my son and different things, and it has to come to a point where, as educators, right, we think about ourselves as coaches, and like, this isn't working, right?
Right.
That's the 2 things I want to say. That's one thing. I'm not going to keep doing this, and our kids aren't getting better. Like, it just doesn't
Very
make sense.
definition of insanity, right?
It is.
Yeah.
The same thing, expecting a different result.
It's not working, right? Like, it's not working. Like, I can't go home and sleep at night with this. Like, and it's sad because the reality is our job security sometimes hurts us for our productivity. Because if it wasn't as secure sometimes with the unions and everything else, just being honest, right, I would find a solution, right? But because of that, sometimes they're like, well, they're going to pass them on, it's going to go on. And it's the norm. It's not like it's wrong that people are doing it on purpose, but they're used to that system, and they know that it's not going to make a difference on their job. And I hate to say that, but I also think, as many people say, as Judy said, from the top up, I was in a principal's program at one time, and as I was learning about this whole science of reading and everything, and I realized, I said, hold on, how can the head of the building not be mandated to learn literacy during the program. There was nothing about, granted it was about management, but I think about it as myself. I'm a school counselor. I never taught in the classroom. I know I can manage people, motivate people, and I love education, and I can run a building. I know I could, right? But I wasn't being taught the number one skill while kids are in school. How can I help everybody else? Like that just didn't make sense to me. But I think about like others who may become like as a gym teacher, now they become a principal. You were never taught that. You're a phys ed teacher. Like literacy is number one. Like you can watch the data and watch it, but if you can't do what Izzy's doing now and coach your teachers to be able to help the child, that's just, it's not your, what are you evaluating? How can you even tell somebody's doing something correct? So I think it's such a system, like complete, change. It's just scary.
So I just want to
sorry,
jump in and just say in the article,
Mhm.
they said that there are lower expectations for Black kids and what they're capable of doing. So they weren't alarmed that he, meaning this child Jackson, who was struggling, couldn't read in first or second grade. So basically it's like, oh, not a big deal. Now, again, going back to different areas, and you talk about the white, dyslexia moms, I'm going to say just suburban moms, in general, these white suburban moms, if a kid is not reading in first or second grade, again, they would be banging down the school door, what's going on here. And yet, what I think the feeling is, again, that's why we're having this conversation. Do you believe there are lower expectations for Black kids? Is that the reality? Do you believe that there are lower expectations?
Not for me, there's not.
Well, I'm
Not-
saying from not
Yeah.
personally, but as a general.
No, but I think it's good for her to say that. I think it's good to say that so we can hear why you feel that way,
Mhm.
and but maybe others' opinion. I think that's good to hear what you feels on.
Well, for me, every kid that I'm near becomes my child.
Mhm.
I have two sons, a boy or girl. I'm working with them. They are my children, and I treat them as if they're my kids. And I have very high expectations. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, feel that all kids are capable of achieving. I really, really, really feel that way.
But
And
do
that's
you-
how
But do you,
that's
I'm
really
gonna
how I
cut you
feel.
off, but do you believe that doesn't exist? I'm gonna tell you this.
Well,
I was also a
yeah.
coach.
Yeah.
All right, I was a coach as well. I was a regional literacy coach
Yeah.
going into multiple districts. And the districts I was assigned to go into were predominantly Black and Latino school districts. And I definitely spoke to teachers, and they had very low expectations for these kids. I heard it. So I definitely believe that's true. I'm not saying that
It's everyone.
you, Judy, have low expectations, but I think it exists. And I heard it with my own ears. So I definitely believe that's so.
Faith.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I was just I'm coaching a teacher in third grade, and we were talking about some of the expectations of some colleagues, and it was clear that the expectations are low, and it comes across in many different ways. But this is like, again, I say, and I've said it from the beginning, and I think Tre would agree with me also, that this is systemic and it's bigger than education, because unfortunately there are lower expectations. Now, does every teacher have them? Absolutely not. There are teachers here that would like lay it all on the line every single day. And it's a shame that they're not enough to like turn the tide, as it were, right? There are plenty of teachers that are trained in their letters trained. They have that background in the science of reading. They're using it every day. But if it's not the whole school, you won't see a whole systemic change, right? And so I really appreciate what Tre said when he said it's got to come from the top down. But I'd like to add that every day we wake up, we have a choice. We have a choice to learn. We see what's out there. We have a choice to learn it. And if we want to make a difference, we can. So.
Right.
Yeah, I think, a mentor of mine told me years ago, it's not that they have no expectations for us, it's that they have low expectations, and it always stuck with me. And, I just thought about that, about responding to make sure I'm always doing things right, to have high expectations for our students, all students, but definitely ones that look like me, just because I know the walk, I know the feeling, I know the challenges of society, I know the career challenges. I know it all, from my walk. I'm a school counselor, an adjunct professor. I've seen the challenges, right, of being in spaces where people might not want you to be there, nor feel you should be there. So I definitely know that's real. And I don't think it's every teacher issue. I would never say that.
Right.
A mindset that it's easy to jump on board when we're not getting the success we want, instead of saying, how do we stop and change the narrative immediately? Right? Like, I'm just lost how people are okay with being associated with low test scores and no outcomes for kids, and think that it's automatic, like hot potato. Oh, well, it's the parents. Oh, well, it's the behavior. Oh, well, it's the admin. Oh, well,
That's
it's
the
like,
blame game. The blame game.
it is.
Yep.
It's like a hot potato. Like, we keep throwing it around. And it's like,
Yeah.
I was on another
How they're
interview,
okay with that. Yeah.
and I said, like, we need to have hard discussions, like accountability meetings, where it's like, what could we do better? What could this
That's it.
do better? Like, what can you do better? And like, put it on the line. Like, this is not working. We're in an information age now, like, completely. And you can see where people, they might be lying in their articles, but people are showing success, and people are reading these articles and like, oh, well, we'll look at that later. Look at your numbers. You better look at it now. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So I think it is an expectation thing.
I think that we are, like, speaking as a coach and listening to teachers, no one feels good. No one feels good when kids aren't doing well, right? No one feels good. You might now, do you feel that it's your fault? Like, are you taking responsibility? That's a different story, right? Because we have all of these things that are put on our plate. And I think that, again, that has to be like something that's top down, where we decide we really are looking at what is working as a curriculum. Because the worst thing I feel for every teacher is to be like, okay, I know this works and I know that works, and somehow I'm going to put it together and I'm going to make it work on my own. And you're constantly recreating the wheel, and you have no time to eat, you have no time to sleep, you have no time for your family, you have nothing to give to kids. If you haven't filled your own bucket, what do you have to give? Right? So yes, let's take responsibility, but let's come together, because the more people that come together, like we're doing right now and having these conversations, the more likely change is actually going to happen, because that's what we want.
I agree with you. And that is why we're doing this show, because we need to really listen and talk to each other. And what I've seen so far is, a lot of people talking about social justice. And again, these become buzzwords and slogans and catchphrases. And I'm not saying, it's not true. Obviously, this is about social justice. But it's almost like people are talking about it, but not talking with each other. That's what I've seen. It's like, a lot of people getting up and doing a presentation about why it's this is a social justice issue, but they're not doing this. They're not having the hard conversations.
You're right, Faith. It's like some people are just reading these books and that's it. But the discussions have to happen. And I think, teachers sometimes have a very hard time because they don't have the control to pick what curriculum is going to be used. They don't have the control to buy all the resources. I mean, they have a limited amount of money. So I think a lot of the inequity exists also because, some schools are deciding, okay, we're going to have 2 reading specialists in the school for our RTI. And some schools are like, we don't have the money. We're not going to have that. We barely have teachers. So I think that there is definitely inequity in our schools. I think that there's inequity in teacher training. I mean, I see a lot of shifts, but some people are letters trained. I've had the privilege of being in that. That's 180 hours of training, but not everybody's had that training. And training is one thing, but having that help and support and guidance to be in the field and put that training to life. Like I have Warren Gillingham training too. But the key is really to put it into practice and having that love and support and, you know what, getting some positive feedback too. We can't always say, oh, you're doing everything wrong, because again, that becomes the blame game and it's a cycle of never ending. And you know what, a lot of teachers want to leave the system. It's not easy to work in these tough schools where there's a lot of kids failing. It's hard. And it becomes upsetting when, even if their phonics program is good, but the rest of the day doesn't look good and your data still sucks, you're like, what am I doing? You're like a hamster spinning in a wheel and you feel like, shit, nothing's changing. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Like, when are we going to celebrate success? When are we going to celebrate Black greatness and talk about great things?
And I think that's what I said earlier about, the job security and the pay and everything and such. And I said, and I don't want to be rude, because I agree with you, Judy, and everyone else. Like, if it's not working, people get upset. They hurt inside, right? But I just feel like because of the job security, even though you're in that hamster wheel, you get more money. Right, you get to do other things with your own family, and you keep forgetting. Like it sounds so bad, but it's the reality. And then your tenure, and you really can't lose your job, and
Go up on a salary step, and
you get lazy. Like unless you're intrinsically motivated, or if you just care, like it's easy. It's not right, but it's easy for people to get content with the.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Trey. I gotta jump in. I don't see a lot of lazy teachers. I don't.
No. What I mean. I'm not saying lazy.
Complacent. I think
complacent.
Talking about
Yes.
complacency.
Okay.
Not lazy
Not
as in like
That's
effort.
different.
Like
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know, like it doesn't take me 2 or 3 years to say, okay, this is not work. Like something like I guess I consider myself a change agent, so I don't wait long when I know something's not right. So that's me personally, right? But I just couldn't keep like we have to be realistic that maybe the complacency is also fear, because some teachers are scared to speak up when things are
Yes, that's right.
So maybe not the word a lot of that as well. So I'm not trying to say lazy as in, but I mean, like
I
you
totally
become
get it.
lazy, like, because it's just the everyday walk in the park and you're like, I know this is not working. I want it to be better. I'm getting tired. It's hard because there's so many kids failing. I mean, I have friends who are educators who are like, it's such a hard year for me. I'm just losing my steam. I'm just going through the motions. That's what I'm saying. Like that's the laziness, like not purposely being lazy, like that you don't want to do it. It almost becomes the.
I don't know.
It's
Trey.
demoralizing. I think
I've got to say,
demoralizing that, and that
It is.
when you're demoralized and you're stressed, you just don't
You just lose
feel like
Yeah.
and productivity becomes low in terms of what you care about. Now you just want to get through the day at this.
And I want to hear what Izzy, and thank you. I want to hear what Izzy's saying. Excuse me if I'm saying, I don't mean the word lazy.
No, I didn't even think that.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, but I was like I feel that teaching is the most social of jobs, right? And it's not just the teachers. The teachers are the final line of defense, and the teachers are the ones that get the crap end of the stick. I was going to say something different, but you get what I'm saying.
I get
right?
it.
And because, like you said, it's more than just the teacher's decision. The curriculums are chosen by districts, by regions, and these curriculums may or may not be effective. Right? And then they don't have a choice in what the curriculum is.
But that's where I would push back, Izzy, and say it's time to speak. Like, we're in a knowledge-based economy. This internet, this Twitter, like everybody here, I think, met through internet, right? Was that what everybody said?
No, I met
Except
for you.
Judy,
Okay.
we met in real life.
But I met Judy.
But you get what I'm trying to say, like,
yes.
and it's like we're in a different age. So I agree with you 100% that people are, because it's coming top down and they don't. But I can find more articles, more studies, more people you know, like yourselves, like Izzy, I can have you in a meeting now to talk to my parents here in my local community. You get what I'm saying? Like, so I'm with that, but I'm not going to sit there as an educator and like I work in this
and not say that you don't
that's what
have
I'm saying.
responsibility. Like it's about owning what we can do, right?
Yes,
So
you can
we
bring the
start with
resource
the
back to the
classroom
people.
that we're in, and
Yes,
from the classroom that we're in, when teachers see change happening, they want to see what that train, who's on that train. I
right.
want to get on that train. So
Yes,
from that piece, I completely see that grassroots, you're growing it from the bottom up, but you do get that pushback
you
from
do.
administration. So
You
I just
do.
wanted to be fair. I'm trying to be as fair as I can because life is what it is. You know what I'm saying? But that's one of the things when you were saying that, I was like, okay, Izzy, I'm feeling away because at the beginning, I'm a teacher first, right?
No
So
doubt.
I'm like, I know there are times when I had a student that didn't move and I didn't know what to do,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And I looked and I tried and it didn't work that year. And then they needed a new teacher. They needed a new framework. They needed maybe a new
True.
school. I don't know. But when you said that, I was like, oh man, did I take responsibility? This is where we go, right? Am
Yeah.
I taking responsibility? Because it always starts with you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It starts with us. So what can I do differently? And the only thing I can say is you're right in that if we know what will make change, then we have a responsibility to do it.
Let me say two things, and hopefully this computer don't die, but my battery's low. But let me say two things. Make y'all laugh, right? Two things. One, you know, and I listened from the beginning when Judy introduced you. She said you were 22 years in the game, right? 22 years ago is completely different from today for everybody's access, right? So when you really think about that, we have to think like, there's no way I met Faith Rakowski. It's just not happening, right?
Right.
It's just not. So I do feel that, but as far as these like today's like with the research and everything, like I just feel like it's and I'm being hard on us to better us, but it's no excuses. Like I'm gonna go out there and find ways to learn. Like, you know, most PD, from my knowledge, is chosen from admin, thinking this is what we need as a staff or right. You know, there are times where they give you selection, say, what do you want to do today? But they still chose the options, you know, but and the other thing I was going to say, it was just like innovative, and I don't know if this would ever happen, but when we think about teachers, right, Izzy, you said maybe the child needed another teacher or the system. I think about coaching, right? When I coach kids in football, they play for me for 3 years, I get to see them grow, right? Thinking about this, why don't teachers start, we do this sometimes in counseling, but when they come into kindergarten or first grade, why doesn't that teacher keep that class up until the end of elementary school and see the growth? Because you already built the rapport. A kid has to come back and start a new year with a new person, build a rapport, find the challenges. And I know that sounds deep and futuristic, but we have to really think outside the box to find these changes because things aren't changing. Like if you think about growth, you know, over 1 year and then you have to let the kid go. Could you imagine some of the kids, Izzy, you helped grow and you had them another year? Oh man, game over.
There are
Yeah,
some
but what if-
school districts that
But
loop. They call that looping.
Yeah, but what if
Yes.
they had a teacher that wasn't well trained and didn't have the knowledge? Now they're really at a
Well,
disadvantage.
Judy, we're changing the system, right?
Let's do it, Trey. I'm ready.
We're changing the system, so that ain't gonna happen anymore. So we change the system. You put great coaches in place like you and Izzy, right? And then we put teachers who are trained now, and now they're just building rapport and knowing the skill sets that are I don't know. That's just me. I always think about that because I'm like, I think about coaching is like I watch these kids get better every year because I'm with them and I build a rapport. It's not like I have to pass them off to somebody and they have to coach them the next year and start over, you know, from an athletic standpoint. So, you know, and I've never seen the rolling for educators. I saw it for counselors, you know, but I haven't seen it from my experience, that just being honest. So I don't know. I just think it makes a difference when we're being innovative.
So
Yeah,
I was going to say, let's try tying this up now. We've been chatting for a while. The one thing that I noticed near the end of the article was the parent, Walker, who said that her main regret was that she didn't know more. that she really trusted for a while, didn't really go with her instincts to say more. And she wished she had known this earlier and would have spoken up. And that's kind of why I wrote my book. And if only I would have known. And that was what a parent said to me. So this really struck me at the end of the article, that that's what she was left with. She was happy that her son was getting what he needed, but she wished she could turn the clock back. I think last thoughts, what would you advise parents if we have Black and Latino families listening to this discussion? What would you advise? What would you tell them so that they wouldn't have to say that? Any thoughts?
I would say always trust your instincts. If you think something isn't working, you're right. It's not.
Wow. And to talk up.
And to speak up.
Right.
And I would agree with that. And I also would say, like, try to build a rapport with the teachers, because sometimes they're fearful of speaking up. But if the teacher can build a trust with the parent, you know, and I hate to say but this is to be honest, and they can say, well, I don't know if this is working for my child, whatever this curriculum you're doing, something, and go to the admin and maybe complain about that. That might help the teachers on the back end. And I'm just being honest, because some teachers don't have the courage, but they're okay with sharing while they're frustrated, and maybe a parent could help them as well. You know, it's going to take a whole collective effort. It's not going to be one side. You know, I think that's why I said it's an accountability table where people have to talk, you know, and just something I can clear up. And I want to just repeat that I wasn't trying to call people lazy. I just believe that their efforts become lazy because of so much that's going on, and it takes them down.
I think it's almost like a new term that's in style now, quiet quitting. Like you just can't take it anymore. You're like just trying to get through the day, and you're like, okay, one more day. And that shouldn't, right? Education shouldn't feel like that.
It's like counting down.
So
okay, we're on day, 90, got only so many more to go. Like, that's the same thing. Yep.
Did we cover everything? Anyone have last thoughts before we wrap it up?
I have a last thought.
Go ahead.
So I think the research is telling us that things can get better using evidence-based programs. So we really have to think about that. Really at the high level and the low level. We all have to think about that. I think that there's also an issue that, a lot of parents have been paying through the roof to get their kids extra help. I know Izzy still, she takes her son to Kumon after school like a million times. I'm like, Izzy, when's that Kumon gonna end? And she's like,
never.
So I think, we have to realize that there is inequity. We have to realize that things have to change. That's it. Something's not working. I think things are about to get better. Mandates are coming out for science-aligned, evidence-based curriculums. Let's make it happen. But it shouldn't be that parents have to spend $1 million after school, before school, during the summer to help their kids.
All right. So I want to thank, I think his battery died, which is the sign that we should be wrapping up. So
let's do it.
All right. I want to thank both Isabel Simmons and Tre Hadrick for joining us tonight. I think this was a great discussion. And I just want to finish off by saying that I hope that we have more Black families and Latino families really watching and participating, because we do want to talk. We do want to have these discussions. And I'm glad we had a chance to do that this evening. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being on the show.
Follow the Literacy View on Facebook. You could find Faith and I on Twitter. You could also find us on our YouTube channel. We added our handles and so forth. We're getting better at this, one day at a time.
Yes. All right. Good night. Bye.